meatloaf is such perfect weekend food. There's nothing like Sunday lunch when you eat the sort of food that you know you either have to go for a long walk or just slump on the sofa afterwards. This recipe starts off with a lot of onions. It has a very good vintage, this recipe, good heritage. And I have been told that I must use duck fat. Now, luckily, I can get duck fat at my local supermarket. But if you can't, I would use butter with a teeny bit of oil. And in go all these onions. And the thing is, the onions cook and get sweeter and get very soft. And the duck fat will just give fantastic flavour and that sort of velvety smoothness that you normally associate with fantastic pâté. I managed to extract this recipe, I insisted upon it, from a very dear old friend, and this is his mother's recipe. She must have been born, really, I suppose, just after the turn of the last century, so it's good vintage. And I always add salt if I don't want the onions to crisp up. What the salt does is make the water start seeping slightly out of the onions so that they don't actually fry. But they will get a little golden. They'll be perfect. Meatloaf, well, obviously needs meat, and beef in particular. Good beef, freshly minced. About 900 grams here. The thing is, meatloaf needs to be juicy, and the trouble with pre-minced meat is that often it's sat there for a while. It's perfectly good quality, but it'll just be a little drier. And actually, it's not just the dryness, because these onions here will see to that a lot, but it makes it crumblier, so it'll be harder to carve. I am thinking of everything here. Now, the onions look gorgeous. I'm going to put them to one side just so they cool a little. Into the meat goes an egg, just helps bind it all together. And now some Worcester sauce, just to oomph it up a little. No spices, because I'm staying old school here. Nothing fancy, nothing novel. I want some breadcrumbs, about 100 grams. What the breadcrumbs do is bulk up the meatloaf and as well absorb all the meaty juices as it cooks. And now the tender, beautiful onions. Want all the duck fat in the pan. Right, I'm ready to get mixing. I'm going to move pretty smartish because it's overworking mince that makes it end up tough. And actually, this is something I always think about cooking, is that everyone seems to confuse complicated with time-consuming. Because, yes, this is taking a bit of time. I mean, not a tremendous amount, but you have to think about it. But it's easy. And actually, this sort of cooking is relaxing. It's the cooking that needs precision and a great deal of finicky detail. That is enough to send me over the edge. But then, that's not very hard. Now, what about half of this? I'm going to do the base first. So it really is just like a loaf. I want a flat, sort of oval-ish. I don't want any geometry professor telling me this isn't an oval. It's my meatloaf. So there's the bottom half. And now, inside my meatloaf are jewels. And these jewels are eggs, hard-boiled eggs. And when you cook the meatloaf, the eggs stay inside. They don't overcook, so that when you slice it, you will get a sort of disc of gold just beaming up at you. So now the top. I'm trying to smooth it all into one as best I can, but without being too worried. And now this baby just needs swaddling. And what I'm swaddling it with is bacon. Just going to put slices of streaky rindless bacon carefully over the meatloaf. I want a slight overlap. It doesn't really matter if the bits of bacon slightly burst apart when it roasts. Of course, the flavour from the bacon melts into the meatloaf, and at the same time it crisps up a bit, so it's like a rather lovely coating. Yes, there is duck fat, and yes, there is bacon, And the thing about meatloaf is that it comes from a time when food was fuel. It's meant to be filling. Having said that, I have put baking potatoes in the oven for everyone, and that's partly selfish, which is that I want to fill them up a bit on the potatoes, because one of the joys of meatloaf is a sandwich made with it later when it's cold. Here we are. Just needs a little tucking in. Now this is a Sunday lunch worth sitting down for. Nothing says Sunday lunch more than a crumble. And despite the unseasonality, I'm making strawberry crumble. In fact, because of it. Because when strawberries are a bit hard and unyielding and even a bit crunchy and sour, no, I shouldn't be buying them. But I'm always drawn to them, their luscious redness, which can deceive. And a crumble just turns them from disappointment into something deeply delicious. And I'm throwing together a strawberry and almond crumble. Just hulling the strawberries, which means pulling off these green bits, and throwing them into a regular pie dish. Before I get on with the crumble topping, I want to prink the strawberries a little. So I've got 25 grams of ground almonds. Sometimes when people make pies, they put flour or even ground tapioca in to soak up any excess liquid. I think ground almonds does the job so much better. And anyway, I want the taste. And some sugar. Got 50 grams of sugar. I know this is a lot, but this is only because these strawberries need it. And I know I've talked about using the almonds to sop up excess liquid, but I am bunging a little more liquid in. Some vanilla. I just love the nostalgic, welcoming scent of strawberries and vanilla. And now, though, the crumble. Basically, a crumble is really the same as pastry. It's flour and fat, in this case butter. I'm modifying it slightly. I am using flour, though, 110 grams of it. And I like baking powder. It's not orthodox, but I think it gives it just a little bit of a lift. Just a teaspoon. And into this goes 75 grams of cold unsalted butter, which I am cutting into dice. You can make crumble, obviously, with a machine, either with a freestanding mixer or a processor, but it really isn't difficult to make by hand. I think the best way I can explain how to make crumble by hand is by saying that you rub the pads of your thumb very sort of flutteringly against the pads of your index fingers and middle fingers. Love this feeling. Right, so look, that's it. And now into this bowl of pale golden crumbs, I'm going to add 100 grams of toasted flaked almonds. I want these partly to boost the almondiness, but also because they provide texture. And finally, sugar. Demerara sugar, again for texture, fantastic crunch. 75 grams here. And now I fork, I don't use my fingers, I fork just to keep everything separate. I want it to be combined, but without adding any heat. So the crumble topping, obviously enough, goes on top of the fruits. And I can't tell you what this is like, just with some thick cream poured over a bowlful. It really is like the taste of English summer on a winter's day. This just needs to go into the oven for half an hour. Meanwhile, my meatloaf can rest. Frankly, so can I, because all I need to do is steam some sugar snaps and then slice the meatloaf. And then it's time to share the joy. Ed's mother's meatloaf.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's a good bit there.
There, that looks very
Meatloaf is not meant to be elegant. I don't think. Baked potato, blue cheese dressing, chives for sprinkling.
Yeah, I love chives.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, sorry.
No, onions cooked in duck fat.
Well, look how nice it is.
Oh, well done, Ed's mum.
I've never heard of strawberry. No, neither have I.
I know, it's to resuscitate.
You haven't lived.
I like it with cream, and it's like winter version of strawberries and cream. Wimbledon, only sitting down and playing no tennis.